Hey, quick one. Subscribe if you're done being a loser. Let's go.
Greatest pharmacist in the world, that it makes drugs that work better than any drug in a drugstore. A drug study is about 18 to 25% cause and effect, causality. Our data is between 75 and 85% cause and effect. This is a person creating their own pharmacy of anti-inflammatories, their own pharmacy of anti-carcinogenic chemicals, their own pharmacy of pain relievers. We're seeing this over and over again. So we have this incredible data that says that this is no longer pseudoscience. This is really science. The side effect of a person's transformation has changed my belief in what's possible. I have seen people stand on the stage with stage 4 cancers that were in every single organ in their body that metastasized, and they have no sign of cancer in their body. And we have data that suggests that you put the blood of an advanced meditator and a uterine cancer cell, a pancreatic cancer cell, 70% of the mitochondrial function in the cancer cell is diminished. And the mitochondria is the energy packets of the cell. It's taking energy out of the cancer cell. It works perfect with what we're seeing with the testimonials that people are telling around the world. We've seen blind people see, we've seen deaf people hear, we've seen people with spinal cord injuries walk again, we've seen ALS change, we've seen all kinds of unbelievable health conditions changed by a person simply changing the way they think, the way they act, and the way they feel.
How long have you seen certain things last? Like, how much does the practice have to continue daily to sustain impact? Because I feel that, you know, this isn't, as you know, isn't a one-off thing, and that isn't what you're encouraging. Like, this is the experience of when someone's coming to a retreat or an event, they're having this incredible experience, but then do you measure how people continue to practice?
Yeah, it's important. Yeah, it's super important for us. And of course, we have mounds of data, but let's see if I can say this as clear as I possibly can. When a person has that arousal, where they're feeling that elevated emotion, and their eyes are closed, they're in a room with 1,800 people. There's music playing in the background. They're not eating, they're not smelling, they're not tasting, they're not moving about and feeling. On some level, they're having an inner experience, right? And the body is so objective that it's literally believing it's living in a new environment. And so that elevated emotion somehow tends to drag the body right out of the past into the present moment. So many people with everything from eczema to muscular dystrophy, when they have those events, there's a biological change that takes place in their body where they feel completely differently. Now, some people heal all the way. Some people are out of their wheelchair and they're walking again, but they're limping. And that doesn't mean it's over. It just means they made contact or they hit gold. And so there's varying degrees that we see. We've seen people for 7 years work on a terminal health condition. It took them 7 years to heal that health condition. Some people it takes 2 years, 3 years. Some people they do it in 3 months. There's no predictable menu that we can say it's this way. Now, when people have those more profoundly aroused states, it seems like their change is much more immediate and much more permanent. But for the most part, we see people's response pretty dramatic. Now, it's also important to say that we have seen people heal from terminal cancers, stop feeling those elevated emotions and return to responding to the circumstances and conditions in their life and return back to the same personality. The same personality is the same personal reality, and their body's believing it's living in that same environment, and they're feeling the same way, and they're in the habit of acting the same way and thinking the same way, and lo and behold, the condition returns. We've seen people heal themselves of Parkinson's disease more than once, have one response to some very serious event in their life that produced a very strong emotion, and in 1 hour, their condition returned. Because they literally went back to their old self, and we've seen that person turn around and reverse the condition again. Again, people do the best with what they think is available. The person standing on the stage we've had numerous physicians and researchers stand on the stage. They're the 4-minute mile. They're telling the community, I'm the example of truth. This is no longer philosophy. This is no longer theory. Here's my scans. We had someone with bilateral breast cancer just recently. No evidence of cancer in her breasts or any lymph nodes, no longer in her liver. I'm looking out at the audience, and everybody's leaning in. There's the 4-minute mile, and that person's telling the truth, and they're telling a story, and it's not pretty. It's not always rosy. They went through a lot of dark nights. They went through a lot of their condition getting worse. But every day they had to show up for themselves. If they stopped showing up and doing the work, they would really not believe it was possible. But if they showed up and did the work, it means that they believe it's possible. And I think when you believe in possibility, you got to believe in yourself. When you believe in yourself, you got to believe in possibility. So it used to be a few examples of that. Now we have so many great testimonials, so many great stories, that now people, it's becoming infectious, just like a virus or any bacteria becomes infectious. Now health and wellness becomes as infectious as disease, and you get a community of people starting to break through, and you start seeing these changes where people stand on the stage. Invariably, you're going to see a very strong shift in consciousness, and consciousness is awareness. And if you're unaware that you could actually heal yourself, you'll make the same choice. Once you see it, I think it starts creating a brush fire, and that's really the exciting part. So we're seeing so many great testimonials that are undeniably great stories of transformation. Many of those people still no longer have their eczema, still no longer have their Parkinson's, still no longer have their cancer.
Yeah, since the last time we spoke, I know your team of researchers went and did some work. I wanted to ask you some questions about this. You did some research on the impact of 1-minute breath work. How does this impact our heart rate variability, and how does HRV impact our anxiety?
Let's talk about heart rate variability, because it's an important thing. So your brain is trying to control and predict everything that's taking place in your life, because stress is actually created when you can't predict something, you can't control something, or you have the perception that something's going to get worse. Okay, so you switch on that primitive nervous system, the fight or flight nervous system, and as you shift your attention from one person to another thing, to another place, to another problem, every one of those different elements has a neurological network in your brain. So the arousal of the hormones to say, pay attention, there's danger. As you start shifting your attention to each one of these elements that have neurological networks in your brain starts firing very incoherently. And in fact, you could actually, by thinking about your problems, turn on the stress response just by thought alone, and that's what most people do. So now, there you are, you're sitting in traffic, the heart is pumping because it's trying to get blood to the extremities, because primitive system's switching on, saying that there's a predator, there's danger. And the heart is beating against closed arteries. And the heart starts beating out of rhythm, it starts beating out of order, and it starts beating very incoherently. So when you have incoherence in the brain, and you have incoherence in the heart, when waves are incoherent, when they intersect with each other, they cancel each other out. And when they cancel each other out, that's less energy in the brain. If there's less energy in the brain, you're going to default to some of those reflexive systems. If energy is diminished in the heart, you're not going to trust. You're not going to be vulnerable. You're not going to want to commune. You're not going to want to connect. You're not going to want to feel grateful. It's not a time to feel any of those things. It's time to run, fight, and hide. Okay, so most people say, okay, well, I had a stressful day. I was stressed out the entire day. And at the end of the day, they turn on the TV and they relax. The important thing to realize is that if you're relying on something outside of you to change that emotional state, you'll become dependent on it. So is it possible then to begin to create more coherence in the brain? And the answer is yes, because when you're under the gun of those chemicals of survival, you're narrowing your focus on the cause. You hear something moving in the bushes, you freeze, and you narrow your focus. And it's that narrowing of focus that tends to be obsessive. When we're in stress, we overthink things, we overanalyze. That actually, we've discovered, makes the brain worse. And it actually makes the heart regulate more out of order. So then we said, okay, if the brain is narrowing its focus and it's becoming over-attentive, what if we teach it how to do something else? What if we teach it how to broaden its focus And instead of focusing on something material or something known, just open up and focus on nothing. And the act of broadening the focus actually causes a person to stop thinking and doing and start sensing and feeling is actually what starts to slow their brain waves down. The redundancy of shifting your attention from one person to another problem to another thing causes the brain to fire like a lightning storm in the clouds very incoherently. So as you start to open your awareness and sense nothing, we've seen this thousands of times, those different networks that are firing out of order start to synchronize. And what syncs in the brain links in the brain, and the brain becomes more orderly. It starts to become more coherent. If you could learn how to rest your attention in your heart, and where you place your attention is where you place your energy, regulate your breath, start slowing your breathing down, even if you did it for 1 minute, you could actually begin to change your brain waves, and you could actually cause your heart to start functioning more regulation and more order. If you said, okay, I'm going to work with my body, and I'm going to start breathing, and I'm going to start feeling emotions that I do want to feel. Yes, it may take you a few minutes to get there, but if you keep practicing it over and over again, the heart starts producing a very profound signal. It starts to produce an external magnetic field. It's measurable. So now you have a coherent brain, which means you can get very intentional, and you have a coherent heart, which means you can feel the emotions of your future before it happens. Somehow you have this broadcasting of this Wi-Fi signal, and the brain tends to be electrical in nature, so it sends out an electrical charge into the field. The heart is the magnetic charge. It's what draws things to us.